Monument Valley, 1893. 5 cattle drovers rode into the Red Canyons chasing money. Only one came back alive. He was sunburned, delirious, and barely able to speak. But when he finally did, he told a story so terrifying that people around the campfire refused to repeat it after dark. He said something followed them through the desert, something that could mimic voices, something that left tracks like a man and an animal, something that could not be killed. Welcome back to Mystery Channel. Tonight, we are diving into one of the darkest legends of the American Southwest, the story of a cattle run that turned into a nightmare and the creature many believe was a skinwalker. It happened in the late autumn of 1893. At the time, I was 28 years old, working as a drover on a hard trail through the Utah desert. There were 5 of us in total, hired to move nearly 250 head of cattle from the outskirts of Bluff, Utah, down toward northern Arizona. Leading the outfit was Elias Mercer, a man who cared more about silver than human life. Then there was Nolan, our older foreman, quiet and tough as dried leather. Tomas was our tracker, the only man among us who truly respected the land. And the youngest hands were Caleb and Reed, both still foolish enough to think the desert could be conquered. The trip was supposed to last a little over a week. It should have been simple. But by the 3rd night, we knew something was wrong. The silence was the first sign. No coyotes, no insects, no sound of wind brushing through the brush. It was as if the whole desert had gone still, waiting. Caleb had the midnight watch, and at sunrise he told us he had seen a figure standing on a ridge above camp, tall, motionless, watching us. Of course, Mercer laughed. He called Caleb a coward and told him to stop jumping at shadows. But then Tomas found the footprints. They looked human. Except they were too large. Far too large. Each print was deep in the sand, with long strides between them, as if whatever made them had been moving at a speed no man could match. Thomas stared at those tracks for a long time. Then he quietly said we should turn back. Mercer refused, and that was the moment we sealed our fate. The next night, the desert gave us something worse than footprints. It gave us voices. We were sitting around the fire, eating in silence, when someone called out from the darkness. Not a stranger. Someone I knew. It was my brother's voice. My older brother had died years before, buried in a collapsed mine. But I heard him as clearly as if he were standing 10 feet away, calling my name from beyond the firelight. Then Reed heard his dead wife. Caleb heard his mother. Tomas heard a voice whispering in Spanish from somewhere out in the black. None of us moved. We just sat there, frozen, while the voices circled the camp. Soft at first, then closer, pleading, calling, begging us to step away from the fire. And somehow, each voice sounded exactly right. At dawn, Tomas checked the ground around camp. The tracks were back, but this time, they were worse. They began as giant human footprints. Then, a few yards later, they shifted into the paw prints of some enormous beast. Then they changed back again. Man, animal, man. That was when Tomas finally said the word out loud, Skinwalker. Until then, I had only heard the name in rumors, campfire warnings, old stories meant to scare fools away from cursed land. But when I looked at Tomas's face, I realized he was not telling a story. He was afraid. And before long, the rest of us were too. That same afternoon, Reed disappeared. He had gone out to search for water and never came back. We found his mule wandering alone, trembling, with blood sprayed across the saddle. There was no body, no drag marks, no sign of a fight. Nothing. Just empty desert. Mercer still wouldn't turn back. By then, greed had made him blind. 2 days later, we entered a narrow canyon pass where the stone walls rose high on both sides, trapping the heat and swallowing every sound. That was where we found the markings. Symbols carved into the rock. Circles, jagged lines, Twisted shapes burned deep into the stone, and in the center of the pass was a ring of old bones, bleached white by the sun. Human bones. Not scattered. Placed. A warning. That night, everything fell apart. When morning came, the herd was gone. Every single animal. More than 200 head of cattle had vanished without noise, without a broken trail, without any sign of where they had gone. That should have been impossible. A herd that size does not disappear quietly, unless something terrified them so badly that they stampeded into the wilderness in blind panic. Now we had no supplies, no money waiting for us, and no reason to keep pushing forward. So we ran. We packed what little we had left and rode out under the moonlight, hoping to put as much distance between ourselves and that cursed stretch of land as possible. That was when we finally saw it. It stood on a rise above us. Tall, thin, wrong. Its body was covered in ragged patches of dark fur, but it stood upright like a man. Its face looked like some horrible thing halfway between a skull and living flesh, stretched over something that should never have existed. The eyes glowed in the moonlight, not red, not white, but a deep gold that caught us and held us in place for one terrible second. Then Mercer fired. The rest of us followed. The bullets hit it. I know they did. I saw its body jerk with every shot, but it did not fall. Instead, it let out a scream so unnatural that my horse nearly threw me. It sounded human and animal at the same time, like a man dying and a wolf howling inside the same throat. Then it charged. Everything after that became chaos. Tomas was pulled from his saddle first when his horse reared and threw him. Nolan turned back to help, but both of them vanished into the dark before I could even reload. Mercer and I rode until our horses were foaming and half dead beneath us. Behind us, that scream echoed through the canyons again and again, sometimes far away, sometimes so close it felt like it was breathing down our necks. By the next day, our luck ran out. One of the horses collapsed in the sand and never got back up. Mercer and I kept going on foot under a brutal sun, stumbling through the heat, our mouths dry, our thoughts slipping apart. He was no longer making sense by then. He kept muttering about the money, about finishing the run, about how close we had been. Then he dropped to his knees, and he stayed there. I walked away. Maybe from fear. Maybe from exhaustion. Maybe because some part of me knew he was already dead. But guilt dragged me back after a while. When I returned, Mercer was lying face down in the sand, dead, and all around him were fresh tracks. I remember seeing distant lights ahead, just a few, flickering on the horizon from a settlement miles away. For the first time in days, I thought I might survive. Then I heard footsteps behind me. Slow, heavy, deliberate, not running, not rushing, just following, like it knew I had nowhere left to go. I never looked back. To this day, that may be the only reason I'm still alive. By dawn, I reached the settlement half-conscious and near death. A search party rode out later that morning to find the others, the herd, or any trace of what had happened. They found nothing. No Mercer, no Tomas, no Nolan, no Reed, no cattle, no remains. Just empty desert, silent rock, and a place no one wanted to search after sundown. The authorities called it heat, panic, and bad luck. But they were wrong. I know what hunted us in those canyons, and even now, years later, I still hear the voices sometimes, late at night, just before sleep, soft and familiar, calling my name in the voices of the dead. Some lands were never meant to be crossed. Some warnings were never meant to be ignored. And whatever walked through those red canyons in 1893 may still be out there, waiting for the next group foolish enough to enter its territory. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like the video, subscribe to Mystery Channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next dark legend. And before you go, tell me this in the comments. If you heard a dead loved one calling to you from the darkness, would you follow the voice?